let's check in on Lauren Boebert, the MAGA Republican Congresswoman, and we'll use this as an opportunity for me to update you on the government shutdown standoff, or the funding standoff. And we will get to Lauren Boebert trying to defend Trump after and on the subject of the debate, and failing badly. We'll get to that. But first, here is a video that Lauren Boebert posted of herself in some podcast format talking about the funding battle. Congress is once again debating over funding the government. This is used because of the stakes every single time as a negotiating time, using this as leverage. Both sides will, but especially MAGA Republicans have said, we'll shut down the government if you don't give us this. And I'll update you on that a little bit later. But Lauren Boebert is saying this is what needs to happen in this moment.
Continuing resolution. I'm still working through some of that. I've never voted for a CR. You know, I've heard it said that someone went to one of our Supreme Court justices and said, you know, I'm thinking about bringing you a lawsuit about this agency because, you know, they're really abusing their powers and this and that. The bureaucrats are trying to make laws and all this, and wanted to bring a case before the Supreme Court. And the justice responded to the senator who was saying this to him and said, I'm so tired of you guys bringing me.
Why she had to put hype music under anything but hype commentary, I don't know.
Cases. If you don't like what these agencies are doing, don't fund them. So that's where we are right now. We have the power of the purse. We hold those purse strings. And if we don't like what these agencies are doing, whether it's the Department of Injustice and going after their political opponents and persecuting them like they have President Trump, like they have Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro and our January 6th protesters and all this, well, don't fund them. If we don't like what the Department of Homeland Security is doing and Secretary Mayorkas and abusing their powers and not keeping our country safe, well, don't fund them. If we don't like what the Department of Education is doing in promoting transgenderism to our children and causing this confusion and sexualizing them, don't fund them. So that's where I am right now with all of this spending that's going underway here in D.C. Stop funding the chaos and the madness.
Okay. Ba-boom. Hype music, yes. The promoting transgenderism, I love how what they cite is a flag, an LGBTQ flag in a classroom. What is the Department of Education doing? The only examples I've seen is an individual teacher doing or saying something that MAGA takes issue with. What is the Department of Education doing in promoting transgenderism as they assert? Who knows? We are so appreciative of the thousands and thousands of people who've been subscribing every single day. So let's keep it going. Our race to 1 million subscribers. We're getting so close. Any of you who haven't already, please do click that subscribe button. Back to the video. But most of what she listed off there is we need to use this funding battle in funding the government and target certain agencies like the FBI, DOJ at large, the Department of Education. Let's use this moment as a chance to completely refuse to fund these organizations. Again, remember, even though I never think or never thought that the defund the police on the left movement represented the broader left, that's not something I subscribe to. I don't think the majority did. MAGA made that a defining issue of the left, or they wanted to. To this day, they project that onto Kamala Harris when that's not her policy proposals. But they're for defunding federal police, federal law enforcement in the DOJ and specifically the FBI. Why? Because Trump's being prosecuted? Because he got himself into legal trouble? Why? Because Steve Bannon got himself into legal trouble? All your problems are not our problem. All of your legal troubles are not the fault of Biden or the left or the weaponized government, as you call it. Maybe you can just stop breaking laws and then you won't have to be prosecuted. That's the solution I'd propose. But I forget who mentioned this. It may have been Mitt Romney, and many have pointed to the fact that you have people who actually have an interest in governing. And in the Democratic Party, that is a lot more people. There's a larger percentage of the Democratic Party who of course cares about politics and will politicize things, but also sort of wants to get some stuff done. But you also have people who are only interested in noise making, and that's what gives them the support that they have among the portion of the party that they're going for. And that makes up a much larger portion of the Republican Party. It's the MTGs, it's the Lauren Boeberts, etc. And so Lauren Boebert right here is representing that perfectly, because if you actually want to govern, you know you're not going to get Democrats to sign on to a funding resolution that includes defunding federal law enforcement. That's not going to happen. So be serious. It's just like how if Democrats said we're not going to fund the government unless you implemented universal health care, that also would be ridiculous because Republicans aren't going to go along with that. You got to be a little bit willing to compromise and be serious for a second. But the Boeberts of the world and others in Congress who constantly threaten this, they're not actually getting their political credibility from serious governance. Instead, because of the more extreme part of the MAGA base being excited by the noise making, all they have to do is make noise. All they have to do is prove they're more MAGA than the other people. And the way you prove that is saying we need to defund all of these organizations, the Department of Education. Let's go after the DOJ. Let's defund, I guess, the Department of Homeland Security, she said, because of Alejandro Mayorkas. And it's a very simple way to approach politics. And if the whole Congress was made up of just noisemakers, nothing would ever happen. Nothing would ever happen in the interest of the American people. Ross Story reports, and then we'll get back to that Lauren Boebert interview that I mentioned. Marjorie Taylor Greene rages at Mike Johnson and calls to fund government with Dems. Wait, what? What? So before I show you the tweet where MTG is saying something totally unexpected, but I think she's wrong on a lot of what she'll say, but it's crazy that she's breaking from MAGA in a way that makes slightly more sense, which is rarely said about MTG. The showdown right now is over your normal things like Boebert just listed there. They're constantly trying to bring that up, and we're going to show Trump we love him by going after the DOJ because they're going after Trump. And the January 6th defendants, oh my gosh, we need to get justice for them. But there's something else right now, and it's the SAVE Act. And it's something that has been a part of the congressional conversation for some time, which is them through them through less provocative means trying to, once again, this would be the criticism of this legislation, deteriorate the belief in our electoral process. So the SAVE Act is in the interest of preventing non-citizens from voting, based on the premise that we have this epidemic of non-citizens voting in presidential elections and elections otherwise. It's not a thing. Time and time again, it's investigated. Trump tried to investigate this to prove his claims. Couldn't find evidence of it. But that's what this is about. So Democrats are saying, while we agree non-citizens should not vote, we will not play into your stunt, and we won't give credence to the premise that we have non-secure elections at the moment. And so with that being said, Marjorie Taylor Greene said this. This is a classic bait and switch that will enrage the base only 1 month before this election. When they find out they've been tricked and let down again, the only way to make the SAVE Act a law would be to refuse to pass a CR until the Senate agrees to pass the SAVE Act and Biden agrees to sign it into law. This would force a government shutdown on October 1st because Biden and Schumer both said they will shut down the government as they are adamant against the SAVE Act. Johnson will not commit to standing up against the Democrats, talking about Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, in a shutdown fight, and will allow passage of a clean CR in order to fund the government because he believes the government shutdown will be blamed on Republicans and will hurt their elections. Johnson's leading a fake fight that he has no intention of actually fighting. Even with the shutdown and full fight in October, it would be too late for the SAVE Act to make a difference for this election because absentee ballots would already be being mailed and early voting already starting. I refuse to lie to anyone that this plan will work and it's already dead on arrival this week. Speaker Johnson needs to go to Democrats, who he's already worked with the entire time, to get the votes he needs to do what he's already planning to do. So she's saying, all right, you know what, Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, go ahead, make the deal you're already going to make with Democrats to fund the government without the SAVE Act as a part of those negotiations, because Mike Johnson's saying, we'll fund the government like the Democrats want it if they'll give us the SAVE Act. MTG even though her intentions are awful, is correctly acknowledging what Democratic Congressman Jeff Jackson pointed out that we covered in a bonus show. You can get the bonus show at Luke, or by clicking the join button below, I should say. Sometimes the link tries to jump out of my mouth. But he pointed out this is all for naught. You're going to have the MAGA extreme people saying, no, we want this, yeah. And then Mike Johnson go, okay, I'm going to do that. And then, never mind, all so that there can be shutdown theater, but not an actual shutdown. And MTG short-circuiting that, saying, don't do the theater. You're not going to do this anyways. Just make your deal with the Democrats, which is a very interesting thing developing. And that is the history of a lot of speakers of the House, because they realize the disaster that would come of fully listening to their MAGA wing would actually cause the Republican Party to be hurt politically, because their lack of an ability to actually govern is laid bare. So often they pretend like they're on board with the MAGA stuff, and then last minute they actually make a deal with Democrats. And that's, I guess, what MTG is fed up with, which is the correct decision on the part of the Speaker of the House, if that's what ends up happening. Interesting that MTG is saying, just go ahead and do that up front. Here's Lauren Boebert, going back to her on Real America's Voice. This is post-debate, and it's so pitiful watching them cope over Kamala's trouncing of Trump.
Or not, they just end it. This is what happened. They would cut to break. They would cut them off. They would change topics. Let me play you a clip of an issue that both you and I feel very strongly about. That's the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan, one of the biggest debacles of the Biden-Harris administration. Let me play this clip and then get your response here.
And these people did the worst withdrawal, and in my opinion, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And by the way, that's why Russia attacked Ukraine, because they saw how incompetent she and her boss are.
President Trump, thank you. I want to move on now to race and politics in this country.
So, Congresswoman, they just move on. We're not even going to have you respond to that. Just move on and let's not talk about Afghanistan. It's diabolical.
It absolutely is. And these are the same people who say that the Biden-Harris administration has been scandal-free. Well, I think that was the largest scandal that has taken place there at Abbey Gate, at Kabul, with our military being taken out, American citizens being left behind, and 13 of our nation's heroes losing their lives. And then, of course, when they were brought home to Dover, Joe Biden checking his watch, showing that he didn't want to be there, didn't have time to be there at the State of the Union. When I called him out for killing those 13 service members after having spoke to those Gold Star families personally, met with them in person, and the next day his spin doctor Jen Psaki said that he didn't have time to address the Afghanistan surrender to the Taliban. Those are my words, not hers, during the State of the Union. But this was one of the very first scandals that we saw. And look at what the moderators did. They went to their favorite topic after President Trump is addressing a very serious issue where we have fallen soldiers, where we have Gold Star families who are ignored largely by this administration, by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. They went to race in politics. Well, we don't like what you're saying. You're probably right here, so we're going to pull the race card.
Yeah. Race and politics, after all that, which is exactly what they want to thrive and feed into.
So a lot there, as so often happens in these segments, when there's just a barrage of dishonest talking points, segments would become every one of them an hour if I went through every single one. We've spent a lot of time recently talking about the Afghanistan, specifically with Josiah from Pondering Politics, walking through a lot of those ideas that were expressed by Boebert, the stuff Trump said on the debate stage about equipment left behind, going through debunking the dishonesty that is expressed there. And then with the tragic loss of life that did happen, it's strange to me that they never acknowledge that that's part of why, as terrible as it ended up being, the withdrawal needed to happen and things clearly could have been done better. But with the plan that was put into place under the Trump administration, that, remember, in 2021, before the withdrawal, Trump bragged that they're stuck in it. They can't undo the plan I made, so they're going to have to go through with it. He was taking credit, and then after the withdrawal, he stopped taking credit. His words, not mine. But that's part of the reason why Biden took the political damage of doing it. It was going to be disastrous, probably even more disastrous than, retrospectively, we can say more disastrous than it needed to be. But that's a part of why presidents, including Trump, didn't follow through on their promises to get us out, was the fear of something like that. But the fact that more soldiers died under Trump, American soldiers in the line of duty, than under Biden in total, is because of Afghanistan. And we shouldn't have, in this endless war, American lives being lost. It doesn't feel like they address that part of why the withdrawal ended up being something Biden decided to do, to prevent more soldiers from dying. And then in that process, just a devastating thing happened that, of course, Biden and Harris have acknowledged and will continue to. But do you notice what they did there? On the Afghanistan point, they're saying that they switched around to race because they couldn't let Harris have to address that. She had already done it. A criticism of the debate from the left has been Trump got the closing word on so many topics, which is actually a benefit because then Harris couldn't go through and debunk some of the points. But the reason was she'd already made a bunch of points about that. Trump had his chance to address it. And then the next topic was, hey, Trump, you said that Kamala Harris turned black. That's not the moderator's fault. That's not the ABC structure of the debate's fault. That's Trump's fault for saying that. They don't want to bring up race, but Trump brought that up to say that Harris isn't really black, and he was posting her birth certificate saying, see, it proves she's not, incorrectly. So you talk to your guy if you don't want that to be a topic of the debate. It's not a distraction. If any presidential candidate questioned the race of the other candidate, of course that's going to have to be brought up at the debate. That's a major item. Here's a little more.
It's great to see you.
Great to see you too, Grant. And, last night's debate was certainly interesting, and the frustration, those emotions of anger that we saw from the president, I think that's something that every American is facing right now with wide open borders, an increase in crime rates, and a failing economy, not being able to.
Borders aren't open. Boebert opposed a really strong border security bill. Crime is way down, lower than it was even under Trump for his entire administration, and the economy is not collapsing. It's doing really well. It's the envy of the world.
Afford to buy a home. That's one of the biggest contrasts between President Trump's policies and Kamala Harris's policies. Under President Trump's administration, Americans could afford to buy a home and participate in the American dream. And under Kamala Harris and Joe Biden,
Kamala is the pronunciation. Gah!
and well, in just 3.5 years, it's near impossible for first-time homebuyers to purchase that home.
By the way, as she keeps listing off things, I'm going to address this. I know you're thinking, wow, he cares about pronunciation, but not the point that she's like. I know what you're thinking. We're going to get to it. I just wanted to make all of our points first.
So that anger and frustration, I believe, is a form of compassion that the president was displaying last night in the debate. And it's certainly frustrating when Kamala Harris is able to stand there and lie some 27 times without a single fact check, while the moderators were certainly helping her, assisting in this debate by fact checking President Trump over and over again. Bottom line is, under President Trump, you can afford to be a homeowner. Our borders will be secure, your pets will be safe, and our economy will be.
Oh gosh, that again. So we're going to talk about in a different segment or on the bonus show. I don't know what we're going to do today. We'll see. But this reporting about experts, memory experts, weighing in on why Americans have blocked out of their memory the pandemic and how that benefits Trump politically. And so when a lot of these problems are cited, they're very real problems. But MAGA refuses to consider how the global impact of the total economic disaster caused by the pandemic that even in that time, people predicted would take years and years and years to fully recover from and to fully address all the problems related to, how that also impacted the United States. And the affordability issues is just such a big part of that. And then Harris is running against Trump, and in plans for what we do to address some of those things, Harris actually cites plans. The only thing I've heard Trump say, and I watch a lot of Trump content, unfortunately, when asked about affordability issues, whether it be childcare or grocery store related expenses, the only thing he cites, two things. First, energy. Second, tariffs. Energy, if he's saying we need to turn back on the light switch on energy because, man, Biden, Harris, they just crushed energy production. Again, record energy production going on right now. So clearly the affordability problems are more complicated than just we got to release the power of American energy because it's being hindered by Biden, Harris. No, it's been released, and then there's more to be done on addressing those affordability problems. So that doesn't make sense, right? Because we're doing item one already, so that can't be the solution unilaterally. Number two is inflationary. Sometimes you say, let's get a little bit of inflation because we want to bring back supply chains based on tariffs. There's reasons to use certain tariffs, but he's saying inflationary actions is how we get inflation under control, which tariffs are. Whoa! Huh. So I agree there's problems. Listing off a bunch of problems, a bunch of which were exacerbated by the pandemic and Trump's mishandling of it, doesn't mean anything. Solutions is what means things to people. And Harris actually has outlined thoughtfully her plans for addressing those very problems. Lauren, let me know. I know that went on long. What you thought of that in the comments. Support the show by clicking the join button below. And get election-themed merch at lukebeasleymerch.com.